On September 12, 2025, the night sky became a stage for a cosmic revelation. Astronomers watched as something impossible carved its way out of the darkness. A colossal wanderer blazing in from deep space, its shimmering tail stretching across the heavens 5 times the width of a full moon. It was so vast and luminous that even backyard telescopes caught its ghostly glow, as if the universe itself wanted every eye to see it. Within hours, confirmation struck like thunder. This was no ordinary comet. It was something far larger, far brighter, far stranger than any celestial visitor ever recorded. Officially cataloged as C-2025 R2, but quickly christened SWAN, its name whispered across observatories worldwide. Yet it wasn't the sight of it alone that sent chills through the scientific community. It was the timing. Because hurtling in from the opposite edge of the sky was another interstellar nomad, the infamous 3IATLAS, racing toward the sun with eerie precision, both set to reach their closest brush with the sun within the same 10-day window, both vanishing into the solar glare at their most critical moment, and both showing anomalies that shattered the rules of nature. The odds of such a double incursion? Practically zero. The word coincidence began to fade from scientists' lips, replaced by another, far heavier term: mission. If one interstellar object was strange enough, then the arrival of a second, 100 times larger, threading the same solar corridor suggested something staggering. We weren't just witnessing cosmic accidents, but perhaps an operation unfolding before our eyes. And as the data poured in, the most chilling detail about SWAN wasn't just its size, it was its behavior. Unlike the wandering ice comets we've cataloged for centuries, SWAN refused to play by the rules. Instead of scattering light in dusty, chaotic patterns, its reflective properties carried metallic signatures, traces of nickel and cobalt, the very same elements humanity uses to forge alloys strong enough to outlast time and shield against corrosion. Soon, whispers of a new name began spreading through observatories: the Fortress. Because while most comets crack, crumble, and disintegrate under the merciless pressure of the sun, this one endured. It didn't just survive, it appeared armored, maintaining a brightness curve so unnatural that ice and dust alone could never explain it. And then came its tail, already record-breaking in length, moving not like vapor torn by solar winds, but pulsing with subtle, rhythmic changes, as if unseen engines were guiding its path. Picture a skyscraper-sized tank drifting silently through the void, cloaked in a radiant halo that might not merely be gas, but an electromagnetic shield bending the fury of the solar storm away. That is the image scientists now struggle to comprehend. But what unsettles them even more is the timing. Because while SWAN looms like a fortress, its smaller counterpart, the infamous 3IATLAS, dances like a drone, erratic, agile, with bursts of acceleration and sudden color shifts in its tail that no natural process has ever explained. Together, they don't look like random intruders. They look like pieces of a system, two connected entities converging on the sun in the very same window of days, vanishing into the glare, exactly when their true nature could be revealed. And when astronomers overlaid the arrival vectors of SWAN and Atlas onto a star map, something extraordinary began to take shape. SWAN descends from Aquarius, Atlas from Sagittarius, two origins separated by more than a quarter of the celestial sphere, two trajectories that should have had nothing in common. Yet somehow these wanderers enter the inner solar system at nearly the same solar distance, each reaching perihelion just 3 days apart. Statistically, such synchrony is a mathematical ghost, impossible to the point of absurdity. Ordinary comets scatter their arrivals across decades, even centuries, but never like this, never together. And then comes the silence, the blackout. From October 8th to October 18th, Earth's telescopes go blind under the sun's blaze, a window of total invisibility. And in that window, precisely when our instruments are useless, both the SWAN and Atlas draw closest not only to the sun, but to each other. Coincidence? Or choreography? To many astronomers, it looks less like chance and more like coordination. Two objects timing their secret meeting beneath the cover of solar interference. Think about it. Two anomalies, arriving side by side, vanishing together into the one place and time humanity cannot look. In the language of orbital dynamics, this is called a corridor. A razor-thin passage of space and time where alignments defy randomness. And this corridor, whether by accident or design, has cracked open a question the scientific community has long tried to avoid. What if these objects are not merely passing through? What if they are converging for a purpose? And if orbital mechanics plant the seed of suspicion, the energy data fans it into fire. Because Atlas has already stunned researchers with bursts of acceleration, thruster-like maneuvers so powerful that each pulse would demand the energy of 10 nuclear power plants. Yet even Atlas's shocking power pales beside the enigma of Swan. Its implied energy levels dwarf imagination. On the order of 10,000 gigawatts, more than the entire electrical output of Earth combined. No natural comet nucleus could ever unleash such force. Its reflective metals, its unyielding halo, and its rhythmic pulses all point not to chaotic outgassing, but to something deliberate, as though plasma bursts were being used to steer it like a machine. The notion of engineered propulsion, once buried in the vault of science fiction, is now quietly whispered in observatories around the world. The numbers cannot be dismissed. And then there's the deeper riddle, the pulses themselves. They are too regular, too patterned, less like exhaust, more like a signal. So consistent that whispers of a new name circulate, not the fortress, but the beacon. If Atlas is a drone, scouting, shifting, adapting, then SWAN may be the mothership, a colossal construct built to endure millennia, returning not by accident, but by cycle. With an orbital period of over 22,000 years, Swan could have crossed our skies before history was written, long before the rise of civilization. Its passage etched into myths, carved into stone, remembered as warnings. And now it has returned, aligned once more with another anomaly, as though to remind us that we are not alone in shaping the heavens. But just as the world's curiosity reached its fever pitch, silence fell. NASA, ESA, and other space agencies abruptly restricted data releases, cutting off high-resolution imaging and radar tracking at the exact moment Swan and Atlas neared the Sun. Officially, this was called solar conjunction downtime, a standard precaution. But leaked reports revealed the truth. These orders were explicit. Avoid public statements, deny requests for raw data, redirect proposals for independent observation. Those were the whispered instructions. The blackout was not merely natural, it was enforced. But the silence of institutions only ignited the determination of those outside them. Independent astronomers, refusing to be blinded, rallied together across forums and encrypted networks, their telescopes aimed defiantly at the heavens. Groups like Spain's Aero Tracker Collective and Bill Gray's Distributed Telescope Network began pooling fragments of data, desperate to assemble the puzzle pieces that governments kept locked away. This underground resistance only fed the fire of speculation, that something extraordinary was unfolding behind the curtain, something officials were determined to hide. Because if Swan and Atlas are not random wanderers but converging for a purpose, then the true question is no longer what they are, but why now? And if their meeting was deliberately engineered, then humanity has stumbled into the middle of a mission we were never meant to see. As independent eyes continued tracking 3IATLAS, the anomaly deepened. Its tail wasn't merely glowing, it was shifting, as though responding to commands. Over the span of weeks, astronomers recorded 3 abrupt accelerations, each sharp and unexpected, each spaced like clockwork. And with every surge came a startling change in its luminous tail, glowing red, fading to neutral, snapping back again, as if an unseen mechanism was recalibrating propulsion. This was no gradual outgassing caused by the sun's heat. This was abrupt, rhythmic, controlled, and the energy estimates were staggering. Each thrust demanded the equivalent of 10 nuclear power plants running at full force. Not for a spacecraft, but for what we were told was only a chunk of ice and dust. What Atlas displayed should have been impossible for a natural body. Yet, eerily, it made sense if it was a machine. And then came SWAN, its colossal frame mirroring the same strange behavior, only on a far grander scale. Its enormous tail did not swirl in chaos, but pulsed with microbursts, subtle nudges that looked less like chance and more like course corrections. Side by side, they painted a chilling picture, one small and agile, the other vast and unstoppable, both maneuvering inside our solar system, not as wanderers, but as participants in a plan. And the most unsettling discovery? Their thrusts weren't random. They appeared synchronized. For centuries, astronomers have trusted orbital dynamics to cut through illusion and reveal the truth. But this time, the truth itself was terrifying. From opposite ends of the galaxy, SWAN and Atlas converged into the same narrow corridor of space and time. Their perihelion points, their closest approaches to the Sun, ended up separated by only 50 million kilometers, less than the gap between Earth and Mars. Their timings, within 3 days. And all of it unfolding during the very solar blackout window when Earth's instruments were blinded by the sun's glare. To comet watchers used to centuries of sporadic, scattered arrivals, this was unprecedented. Normally, interstellar visitors arrive once in decades, their orbits spread across time and space. But here, two anomalies entered the same corridor, in synchrony, as though following a schedule, as though obeying a cosmic clock beyond human comprehension. It is as if the sun itself is not just a gravitational anchor, but a rendezvous point, a hub for missions. When chance collapses, only design remains. And now, even the most cautious voices in astronomy are being forced to speak. Even the most skeptical voices began to murmur the unthinkable. Admit it, this looks engineered. When scientists compared the energy signatures of the two objects, disbelief gave way to dread. Atlas, with its sudden bursts of acceleration, radiated pulses equal to 10 gigawatts, enough to power entire cities. But SWAN, its sustained luminosity implied an energy output of 10,000 gigawatts, more than the entire Earth produces at full capacity. No natural process fits this scale. Comets sublimate ice, asteroids reflect sunlight, but nothing sustains such immense, stable power without tearing itself apart. Theories began to swirl. Was SWAN harvesting solar energy using the sun itself as a colossal recharge station? Was its enormous metallic hull built to capture radiation and convert it into propulsion? Some researchers whispered even darker possibilities. Perhaps SWAN was never a comet at all, but a fortress-like construct, its vast glowing tail not vapor, but a plasma shield shimmering in space. And then came the most haunting speculation of all. What if its energy wasn't for travel at all, but for communication? A beacon, broadcasting not to Earth, but to somewhere far beyond, its pulsing emissions carrying data across the void. If that's true, then SWAN isn't simply visiting, it's reporting. And we are not the intended audience. As both objects closed in on perihelion, the institutions we rely on for truth began to fall silent. NASA, ESA, ISRO. One by one, they curtailed updates, restricted live feeds, and denied access to Webb's raw observations. Information once public became classified overnight. Officials cited internal review and conjunction downtime. But behind closed doors, astronomers whispered of explicit orders to stay quiet. FOIA requests came back heavily redacted. Leaks from observatory staff painted a chilling picture. Researchers reassigned, teams dissolved, telescope feeds quietly restricted. This wasn't the careful pause of cautious science. It was a blackout by design. And in that silence, independent astronomers rose to fill the void. Backyard telescopes were linked into sprawling networks. Old satellites repurposed, encrypted data channels lit up across the globe. While institutions withheld, the underground community kept watching. The quieter the authorities became, the louder the whispers grew. Something extraordinary was unfolding, something so paradigm-shattering that silence itself became a weapon of control. Because when discoveries threaten not just science, but power, truth is not denied. It is hidden, and in this case, silence may be the most terrifying evidence of all. As SWAN and Atlas closed in on their mysterious rendezvous, some researchers turned not to the future, but to the past. The orbital period of SWAN, 22,554 years, suggested something staggering. Its last return would have coincided almost exactly with the end of the last ice age. Suddenly, archaeological sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey gained new weight. Among its ancient stone carvings are spirals, celestial symbols, and depictions that many now wonder were not mere art, but records of a glowing fortress in the sky. Imagine the first civilization staring upward at a radiant construct the size of a small world, its tail blazing across the heavens. The vision so powerful, it became myth. Warnings carved into stone, prophecies whispered across generations, religious iconography etched in memory. Could it be that SWAN has passed this way before, watched by ancient eyes? That its arrival is not discovery, but return? A cycle older than history itself? If so, then perhaps we are not just seeing astronomy in motion, but reliving a story our ancestors feared enough to immortalize in stone. Behind the polished press releases and the carefully worded scientific statements, something else was happening in the dark. Whispers surfaced of a classified probe, launched not from any public program, but from a covert orbital platform. Its mission, to test the true nature of SWAN. Armed with advanced particle scanners, it was built to slice through the blinding tail and return high-resolution structural data. It never made it. Just over 1 million kilometers from the target, the signal cut. At first, analysts thought it was a systems fault, but then the final transmission arrived. A haunting reflection. The probe's own image mirrored back at itself. A fractal echo. as if SWAN had scanned it and returned the picture in perfect mimicry. Seconds later, the feed collapsed into silence. Engineers who studied the telemetry called it an energy wall, a lattice-like field, similar to a Faraday cage. But this was no passive shield. It was active, designed to repel, to push back against intrusions. If true, then SWAN isn't just a traveler, it's defended. And not only defended, but aware. Then came Webb's spectroscopic data, adding another layer of unease. Instead of the usual chaotic blend of ice, dust, and silicates, SWAN's spectrum revealed complex organic molecules, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, so refined, so structured, that some scientists argued they looked engineered. These are the building blocks of life, the raw precursors of amino acids, the very seeds from which biology takes root. Yet, unlike the messy signatures of primitive comets, SWAN's organics were pure, aligned, too perfect. Theories turned darker. What if SWAN wasn't just a machine? What if it was a carrier, a seed ship, designed to transport and distribute life across the stars? If Atlas is the drone, agile, active, gathering data, and Swan the fortress, massive, shielded, enduring, then together they may represent different stages of a far older mission: observation, protection, perhaps even colonization. And if that's true, then Earth's place in this story may not be incidental at all. We may be the next step in a plan older than our species, one unfolding across tens of thousands of years. As the blackout window deepened, independent trackers began whispering a detail few dared to speak aloud. The trajectories of Atlas and SWAN weren't just converging by coincidence. They were aligning toward the same corridor of space, their paths bringing them within reach of each other at the edge of the sun. For natural objects, such precision would be absurd, but here the orbital dance looked intentional, like two ships arriving at a hidden harbor for a rendezvous. Some theorists proposed it was a refueling event, the sun itself acting as an energy node where both objects recharge. Others imagined it as an audit, Atlas delivering the data it had gathered during its passage, while SWAN served as the archive or transmitter to something even farther away. But the most unsettling idea of all was that this wasn't their meeting at all. It was ours. That humanity, finally advanced enough to observe with its new instruments, had just become part of the plan. Because if they have been passing unnoticed for millennia, then why now do they align so clearly, so visibly, at the exact moment we're capable of watching? Perhaps the true rendezvous isn't between them, but between them and us. As Webb's instruments locked onto SWAN, scientists uncovered something so startling that the first reports were almost buried. Swan wasn't just reflecting sunlight. It was emitting radiation in a frequency band nearly silent in the natural universe, hovering between soft X-rays and gamma rays. Comets do not radiate like this. Asteroids do not generate structured emissions. Yet, Swan pulsed with uncanny precision, its intervals regular, deliberate, like a coded signal. The pulses were so intense they overloaded ground-based detectors, even causing temporary blindness in a prototype telescope array in Australia. Some engineers described it bluntly. This felt like deliberate jamming, the kind of technology meant to blind hostile sensors. For the first time, whispers of hostility crept into the debate. SWAN wasn't just a fortress, it might be strategic, an object designed to control who could, and who could not, see it. Where Oumuamua had been silent, enigmatic, evasive, Swan was loud, commanding, disruptive. It bent not only its environment, but our instruments to its will. And then, the signal. Amateur satellite trackers reported a sudden burst of energy, originating from SWAN, but aimed not at Earth, at the Moon. The transmission was no simple wave. It was layered, structured in amplitude, frequency, polarization, even harmonic tones. To human analysts, it looked less like language and more like executable code, an instruction set. When NASA's Deep Space Network triangulated the burst, the destination became undeniable. A very specific region of the lunar surface, a site infamous among planetary scientists for its dense mass concentrations, or mascons, mysterious gravitational anomalies beneath the crust. For decades, they had puzzled geologists, massive hidden weights no natural theory could fully explain. Now the possibility turned chilling. What if SWAN wasn't just observing? What if it was activating something buried beneath the moon, something dormant, waiting for the right signal? If that's true, then the moon, long considered Earth's silent companion, might instead be part of a system we have never understood. During SWAN's approach, the anomalies shifted from the skies to the Earth itself. Magnetometers across continents registered synchronous pulses every 43 seconds, perfectly matching SWAN's emission cycles. Seismographs in Antarctica, South America, and Asia recorded ultra-low frequency vibrations with no tectonic origin. Even more unsettling, entire populations of migratory animals, birds, whales, insects, altered their navigation patterns in unison, as though responding to an invisible compass that had suddenly flipped. Earth itself seemed to be resonating, as if reminded of something it had forgotten, a memory buried deep within its crust. Scientists argued over the causes: solar storms, coincidence, statistical noise. But for those watching closely, the message was unmistakable. This was no longer a cosmic event happening out there. It had reached us, vibrating through our planet, touching systems we thought were immune to the stars. By now, astronomers and theorists alike began piecing together a narrative too frightening to speak aloud. What if Oumuamua, that at first strange visitor in 2017, had been the lock? A silent probe testing whether humanity was ready, a keyhole waiting for the right trigger? And what if 3IATLAS and SWAN together represented the key? The drone and the fortress, the messenger and the guardian. One small, agile, maneuvering, collecting data. The other, vast, shielded, carrying the energy and authority to unlock something older, something far bigger. And then came a detail so eerie it felt scripted. During one of SWAN's strongest pulses, both Voyager spacecraft suddenly went off protocol, transmitting bursts of data analysts still cannot decode. It was as though something buried inside them, silent for decades, had been awakened. If true, SWAN's arrival isn't the beginning of a story. It's the continuation of one written long before us, cycles etched into the fabric of space itself. And if we've just triggered the lock and key sequence, then whatever follows was never meant to be avoided. It was inevitable. The James Webb Telescope was built to look outward, to peer into the first light of the universe and decode the stories of galaxies long gone. But instead, it has handed us a reflection, one that forces us to confront the possibility that the story was never about distant stars at all. SWAN and 3IATLAS did not simply stumble into our solar system as cosmic drifters. Their synchrony, their scale, their impossible maneuvers, and their silence during the blackout all point to intent. A lock and a key, a drone and a fortress, a rendezvous not meant for our eyes. And yet, somehow, we have seen it anyway. That changes everything. Because it means, for the first time in history, humanity may have intercepted not a random object, but a mission, a sequence, a cycle older than civilization itself, returning only now when we had finally built the instruments capable of noticing. And if that's true, then the most terrifying truth is this: we were never the observers. We were the observed. SWAN's pulses through Earth's magnetic field, its coded transmissions aimed at the moon, its resonances rippling through animals, oceans, and fault lines. All of it suggests our planet has been part of this story far longer than we ever realized. The fortress is not here by chance. Atlas is not here alone. Together, they may be parts of a system we cannot yet understand. One that sees Earth not as an accident, but as a node, a data point, maybe even a target. Whether for contact, for seeding, or for activation, the purpose remains hidden. But the silence of our agencies, the blackout imposed on our telescopes, these say more than any press release ever could. We sought answers. Instead, we were handed a mirror. SWAN and Atlas are not just celestial anomalies, they are proof that we may have crossed a threshold, a point where the universe begins to respond to us. And the most terrifying part isn't that we don't understand what's happening, it's that maybe we were never supposed to. So now the question isn't whether humanity will make contact. The question is whether we already have, whether the real signal wasn't what we received, but what we sent, simply by noticing. Because sometimes the act of observation is itself the message. And now, at last, the cosmos may finally be answering back. If this stunned you as much as it stunned us, like, share, and subscribe to follow what happens next. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you on the next one.